You go back to 2021, this is among Republicans, it was 31%. You look just before this election, October of 2024, it was 32%, basically the same number. Then all of a sudden, December of 2024, it jumps up to 44%. Well, what the heck happened? Well, what happened was Donald Trump won the November 2024 election. All of a sudden, folks were far more likely to believe, hey, wait a minute, those votes were cast and counted accurately. But here, I think, is the biggest thing, the biggest sort of takeaway, which was election votes cast or counted accurately. The 2020 election, remember, we mentioned Republicans at 44%. Democrats were at 89% in the 2020 election. Not a big surprise, Joe Biden won that. But look at the 2024 election. Look at Republicans. 94% of Republicans believe that the 2024 votes were cast and counted accurately.
Damn.
Democrats saw a drop-off from 80.
Wait, who's that 6%? Who do you think that 6% is? Trump won California. Oh, Trump was ahead in Hawaii until they stole it. Ooh, Trump would have won Vermont if it wasn't for those meddling kids.
89 to 73. But again, Democrats far more likely to believe that even if their side lost, that the results were counted, the results were accurately.
Unless that 6% is even more based, and their opinion is, yes, it is rigged. We just stole it this time. We just stole it better. Good work, team.
Reflective of the people's wills than Republicans were, Manu.
All right, the wizard Harry Anton breaking it all down. Thank you. Let's talk about a little bit more at this panel. Olivia, you were at the Capitol on January 6th. I was also in the Capitol on January 6th. And I remember talking to a lot of Republicans at the time. They thought Trump was done. They did not think he was going to come back at all. They were disgusted about what happened. They were disgusted, frankly, at Trump's actions in the run-up and everything that happened in the aftermath of him trying to overturn the election. But talk about the way that Republicans have systematically rewritten the narrative about what happened on January 6th and how that has happened since over the last 4 years.
I think around 6 months after the Capitol attack, that's when I started realizing there was sort of this online push of undermining, challenging, and rewriting what happened on January 6th. It wasn't as bad as it was claimed in the media.
I'm one of the 5% of conservatives whose insides actually caught fire.
Look, it's, on one hand, when I see numbers like this, right, I have reasons to be hopeful and I have reasons to be scared when I see numbers like this, right? These are people who believe that the 2020 election had the vote cast accurately within the Republican Party. Now, right after the 2020 election, 31%, only 31% thought it was voted and counted accurately. That 31% who, despite the bombardment of messaging from Donald Trump, said, I still believe that our Constitution worked, I still believe that our democracy worked, and I believe the legitimate president won. While the majority of Republicans believes that it was stolen and was losing trust in the institution of our democratic vote. A year from that number did not change. A year from that now, post-2024 election, 44% believe that the 2020 vote was cast accurately. I saw Joe Rogan was one of these people who thought it didn't, who thought it was stolen, and then was convinced through the election then going on and actually proceeding, and then Donald Trump winning. Because Donald Trump won, that shows that if they rigged it in 2020, they didn't rig it in 2024, it's much easier to just believe that Trump won last time, but this time he won because Biden, an old man, and Kamala jumped in last second, etc. So it shows a good jump here of 12% of people saying, well, you know what, actually, maybe it was. But still, even post, and this is the thing that scares me, because on one hand, it shows a positive trend that I hope continues. Maybe it won't, maybe it will. If Trump continues to open his mouth about it, because he's still post winning this election, going out there and diverting random policy conversations to say, I actually won in 2020 and then they stole it. Ukraine wouldn't have been invaded if they didn't steal it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Making every policy conversation about it. But if he continues to talk about it, it will go back in a negative direction. But right now, in the moment when it should be the most clear that the election wasn't stolen, a majority of Republicans still believe that the 2020 election was stolen. But for some reason, this time they just couldn't steal it. They didn't steal it back in 2016 when the deep state controlled all the institutions. Trump gets into power. Then once Trump's in power, he loses. But then once he loses and is no longer in the institutions, he then wins again. Doesn't seem like a consistent rigging strategy. Okay? If the deep state is rigging it, they're rigging it so it's competitive. They're rigging it in the way that when I was a kid, I played with my action figures and I had my guy, the good guy, and the bad guy. Where, like, the good guy is right about to be thrown into the cavern and, every time he gets out and he wins. They're I mean, come on. It's kind of crazy. They're going to have this go, like, this not even, like, through a trilogy of the Trump family of fights? No. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. So I want to talk about how the perspective on J6 hasn't really shifted amongst most Americans, but amongst the hard right, it has encapsulated so much that Trump is now going to be held accountable if he does not pardon violent J6 protesters, even though it is a political loser each other way, outside of the fact that you would be rewarding those most devoutly loyal to you. So first, I mean, I don't know if I need to revisit what happened. If I need to be like, hey, here's what January 6th was. I was at January 6th. I was there. From the start of the day, it was a very aggravated mood. I was in a Biden hoodie, so the people who were interacting with me from the other side were not giving me probably their best, most Christian outlook. Some people were okay. I met one or two people that were nice enough. But most of the people did not take kindly to me because of that. But I also could just feel amongst the crowd, it was very negative energy. And once there was any sign of violence, people were driven to the violence. People were drawn to the violence. People went towards the violence. And I could tell that because when I heard of the violence, I went over to check out what was going on too. I went over there live streaming everything. And you can find this video footage somewhere online. I think there's like an internet archive of it, but you guys can go find it if you want to. Heading towards it. And people stormed into the Capitol. They stopped the certification of the vote for a period of time and only really relented once Donald Trump, 3 hours after being informed of the violence, told them to go home. And that was after 3 hours of doing nothing outside of having his staff continue to call the Capitol building while it was under siege, trying to get legislators to send the vote back down to the state houses, which were majority Republican controlled, hoping that then he could overturn the fair Democratic vote that ousted him out of office. And so for me, it was violence right in my backyard because I grew up as a DMV local. You know, my grandfather worked at the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, and, you know, he would take me to take your father to work day. Take your father to work day. Yes, that was my strange family. No, he took me to, you know, take your child to work day, and it was, you know, D.C. is my area. My mother was a resident there. My, you know, my friends and I would go out and hang out there and eat from the food trucks and, you know, just kind of wander and loiter at museums as, you know, just do whatever in the city. You know, it's my backyard. And so it sucks to have it happen in your backyard, but it double sucks because it's not only is it your backyard, it's the whole nation's capital. And so you're watching before your eyes as the process has a log thrown into it because a businessman could not accept the fact that he lost an election. And so he had to humiliate the country globally while also doing permanent psychological damage to the American psyche when it comes to trusting our election systems, not because of some legitimate error that was found, but because he just couldn't accept that he fucking lost. And it's pathetic. It's more than pathetic. And the fact that the dude was able to drag himself out of that pathetic hole that he had dug for himself and get him back in the White House is astonishing to me. But it is what it is. The American people voted. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Either way, though, I am still astonished by the day's events, even 4 years later. I don't talk about it like crazy because I feel like some people use it as like a, I don't know, they kind of beat a dead horse to death. But when they beat that dead horse to death, they didn't talk about, you know, I mean, they talked about it from basically every angle. But the thing that I always was worried about the most was damage to the system. The idea that this type of behavior could be normalized and then we could have repeats of it. Because the pitch I get from people who are Republicans that like the country and love, you know, America for, you know, being, you know, a system that protects individual rights and, you know, allows people to govern themselves, like values America for the same things that I know that we're all supposed to, and haven't completely bought into the Trump cult, is their pitch to me would be like, well, this won't happen again. Obviously, this won't happen again. It hit his poll numbers so badly. You know, last time this happened, it didn't work. Obviously, that shows the strength of the system. Therefore, if we reelect him, it isn't really that much of an issue. And this allowed them to justify their votes for the man. This allowed them to justify, or at least overlook, these bad issues. And I'm not even saying that it's necessarily wrong that the institutions might hold. Definitely when you have such a slim congressional majority. I mean, like, even though, right, we didn't see the 15 rounds of humiliation that Kevin McCarthy was put through, we still did see 9 legislators, which is just enough for the new rules that have been set for the amount of people that are necessary to call for House Speaker vote to, you know, revoke the House speakership. And I think it was purposeful that they had 9 legislators do this, withheld their vote to continue to bargain with him for committee positions, like up to the buzzer, because he had such a slim majority, both due to just how the vote went, but also due to some resignations and Trump cabinet appointments where people had to give up their House seats and Senate seats and such. Point is, though, I understand that it's a possibility that Trump could beat up these systems or bend these systems and they could hold. In fact, I would even say that that is the most likely possibility. But when we're getting declarations from Donald Trump that we're going to pardon the people that were involved in doing just the on-the-ground storming, the on-the-ground stopping of the process, they're the fall guys. Trump organizes fall guys for stuff. You know, if he gets into a financial crime, he'll have a fall guy for that. Like, it's stuff that, you know, somewhat shady businessmen do. It just happens.
The money is slowly getting to Dylan. Soon my neocon cash will bring him round to the position actually we all should be in prison.
Thank you, John Bolton. Okay, thank you for the $5. But I mean, like it's you know, the people there that stormed the Capitol were the fall guy. Trump was never supposed to stick his neck out for Stuart Rhodes. Trump was never supposed to stick his neck out for Enrique Tarrio, or the people who actually stormed it. Trump was supposed to do that for the high, you know, the high-priced white-collar people. You know, like the lawyers and the people like Rudy Giuliani, maybe, you know, a Roger Stone type. Not for those people, but now we're getting to the point where it's seriously being considered, and he has talked about it and endorsed it publicly on the campaign trail before the vote, so the American public were informed, or at least the press were informed. Whether the public were informed or took it to heart is another thing. He has indicated that he wants to pardon them. He wants to pardon them, and if you're pardoning them, you're rewarding them, and you're also saying that if you engage in this type of behavior, you could be let off the hook. And if another moment comes around like this, let's say it's 2028 or it's 2026 after a bad midterm, and we have another mess where he wants to send it this way, send it that way, and the process isn't going for him, why not try it on repeat without all of the people within his administration undercutting him like last time, when he has people like J.D. Vance who said he would not certify the vote, where Mike Pence fulfilled his constitutional duty, J.D. Vance has indicated he would not. And so this type of signaling is not only bad for showing the mindset of the president, but it's bad psychologically for the country. It's bad psychologically for the country because when you're in those types of like crowd mentalities, people are getting violence, you know, and your emotions are getting on edge, and you feel like you might be in danger, but you're also angry and want to take your, anger out on something, and you're going out there, you're being violent, you're rioting. And in those scenarios, if you have some idea or any way to like grasp onto some justification for you to think you could get away with this, or for you to think that this is the right thing to do, thinking, oh yeah, the president pardoned those people, both endorsing said action, or at least excusing said action, both morally by a thought leader. To them, Trump is a thought leader, a leader in the community, the president, by a thought leader, and get him off the hook when it comes to any responsibility legally. And then maybe they'll go out and repeat that behavior. I mean, there's a reason why you'll hear about so much anger about the pardoning of certain Black Lives Matter protesters, or them being released without extremely severe sentences, even though there were Black Lives Matter protesters who got severe sentences for violence against police when they engaged in violence against police. But for the ones that were pardoned, the angry response was always like, if you do this, it's just going to encourage this behavior. But if you take that same logic, which has been conservative logic for quite a while, you apply it to this, it doesn't lead to good conclusions if Trump fulfills on his promise. The question is he going to pardon people? I think that's likely. And two, if he does, who is it going to end up being? Is it going to be Enrique Tarrio, who's right now trying to signal to Trump in public, hey, could you please pardon me? I think, 1 second. Is it even in, I don't think it's in the YouTube feed, but Enrique Tarrio is like writing some letters trying to get pardoned by the president, the leader of the Proud Boys. When the Proud Boys were using like signals referring to the Capitol as the Winter Palace while planning to interrupt the certification process. My goodness.
As we mentioned at the top of the show, today marks 4 years since a group of Trump supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol to try and prevent Congress from certifying President Joe Biden's presidential win. I want to bring in CBS News political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns, who joins me now from West Palm Beach, Florida. Caitlin, good to see you. So the president-elect has said that he plans to pardon many of those who were charged in connection with that attack. Has he explained why?
Yeah, Vlad, the president-elect has said that in the first few minutes of taking office, he plans to issue pardons for January 6th defendants. But there are a lot of open questions about what exactly he means by that. Last month at a press conference here in West Palm Beach, or at Mar-a-Lago, I should say, I asked him, does that mean blanket pardons? And he essentially said, stay tuned. And there are a couple of different ways to think about this.
Stay tuned. So to be clear, even if he doesn't end up going through with it, Trump is flat out leaving open the possibility that he could just full-on blanket pardon those who, like, beat cops near to death or contributed to their deaths. Like maiming cops, like permanently injuring people, trying to stop the democratic process, and, like, letting those people go. And do you think those people are not going to immediately all become like mini influencers, mini martyrs, and then go out in the community and then try to repeat the same like knuckle dragging behavior that got them there in the first place? Because they're going to be rewarded for it. They're going to be rewarded for it financially, going to be rewarded for it with podcasts. They're going to be rewarded for it with attention. They're going to be rewarded for it with respect in the little dumb fuck circles. No disrespect to the dumb fuck community. And it's going to encourage the behavior. It can encourage copycats very easily. And for the people, if there's not even another January 6th moment, for some people just wanting that respect, they might try to go out there and find that moment.
You have nearly 1,600 defendants of January 6th. Not all were charged with violent crimes, some with misdemeanors. So is it a pardon for those charged with misdemeanors, or about 170 charged with violent crimes? Things like harming police officers, breaking into the Capitol, using force and violence. So those remain the open questions, whether this is a blanket pardon issued to all January 6th defendants or a group of them. That remains to be seen. But this is something that the president-elect has been.
By the way, one of the most dangerous standards that could be set is if he didn't just pardon the violent ones, which of course would be, it's obvious why that would be bad. But if he pardons the people charged with seditious conspiracy, like Stuart Rhodes, the Oath Keepers founder, that militia, or, the chairman, like Enrique Tarrio of the Proud Boys, that is, you're rewarding the leadership who were trying to plan the people that they try to distance themselves from, to say that they weren't trying to do an insurrection. Those, the insurrectionists, so to speak, the people who did the physical and planning of insurrection, we have records of it. If those people are being rewarded, and those people are going to come back to podcast deals and or viewership and attention and respect and money, what signal does that send to people who now have a organization, an apparatus to organize by, who carried it out before and could well be told to stand back and stand by again?
Pledging to do since he's been on the campaign trail. He has called them hostages, if you recall. So we're waiting to see what exactly that means. There's a few different ways he can go about it, but
you know, it'd be a lot easier for me to feel at least some sense of ease if Trump at some point showed any remorse for anything that happened that day.
He has pledged to issue pardons within minutes of taking office on January 20th.
Okay, let me ask you about this. We're also learning that his lawyers have asked the judge in his hush money case to delay Friday's sentencing. What are you hearing about that?
That's right. His lawyers have asked to delay sentencing because they are appealing the immunity ruling from that judge in New York. Just to take a step back here, remember, when the Supreme Court issued its immunity ruling, the Trump lawyers tried to apply that to this New York hush money case. And the judge in that case said that that ruling doesn't apply because these were acts taken before the president took office. The president's team, the president-elect's team at the time, was arguing that, well, statements from White House staffers and statements that Trump made at the time were used as evidence in that case, but the judge said no. Remember, the Trump legal team wanted this case to be thrown out entirely, and this was, using those immunity grounds, and the judge said no, it has to stand and sentencing has to go forward because that would do justice to the justice system in effect. So now you have the Trump team arguing for a pause in sentencing as they appeal that ruling from the judge once again to the state. And so they have asked for a decision about this, asking for a pause.
By the way, like, that's a totally secondary thing. I'm sorry, I just kind of like bled into his personal trial, but all of Trump's legal stuff is like dead now. It's all dead in the water. It might not be completely dead, but as president of the United States, he will have enough levers, he will have enough influence, he will have enough power in order to try to at least be able to run away from any problems for 4 years, possibly forever. Being able to use that 4 years to try to extend it into forever. It's not good, man. It's not good. It's not good for the standards Donald Trump is setting for the country and who we're willing to lift back into the highest office. It's not good for the standards of what we're saying for those who try to attack what's most fundamental for the country, like the peaceful transfer of power, which used to be something that America was, in real respect, like an envy of the world for having peaceful transfer of powers between government, when many, many other countries would have civil wars and violence and like people like that about the United States. I like that about the United States. It was something that was respected about the United States, and threatening that, hurting that, even if it wasn't a complete smashing of that process or a complete smashing of the tradition, it shook the foundations. It cracked the foundations at the very least, and that's not good. And it's not good. And the worst part is that the people involved, if they get away with it, and the person who was very much provoking the entire process is enabled with more power, and he's never, ever, ever relented that he did anything wrong, then there's really nothing from stopping him from trying again. There might be a few more barriers that were put in place to stop him from using the exact same plan of having the president send it back down to the states and having the electors, because, since then, because he pushed the system to the limit, Congress passed those in a bipartisan manner because both sides agreed that the way that they pushed it was not safe. But that doesn't mean that he won't try to find other ways. The system is very big. There's a lot of places to poke holes. Okay, that's my January 6th shtick.